Pecha Kucha 155, Perspective Made Easy by Ernest R. Norling. So this was a book I just picked up sort of while I was buying something else on Amazon. It was cheap. The reviews were glowing, and I just thought, screw it. It was a good idea. But before we talk about that, I did finish reading Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. He has made a game like Monopoly called Cash Flow. He says it's helpful in teaching people investment techniques. I wonder if I should play it. Sounds like it's expensive, but there's a free version online. Maybe I look at it. It's something I think I should consider. There is a bit in the book where he talks about a friend who his son wanted to buy a car, and the dad gave the kid money to invest, and he had to use his earnings from investing to buy the car. The point being, you should learn early to fail, and then do it often, and then you're not afraid of it in the future. And another key thing was Kiyosaki had an argument with a reporter about writing books. She was writing books, and he recommended she do a sales course to learn how to sell books. I hate sales, and so did she, but maybe I should rethink that perspective, because I do need to learn how to sell my art. But yeah, Perspective Made Easy by Ernest R. Norling. This was written in the 1930s. But if it's good at what it does, it will stand the test of time. So the fact that this is still being recommended on Amazon today, obviously Amazon's not been around that long. He starts with the basics, the horizon line, establishing what eye level is. It seems simple enough, but things above your eye level you look up at, things below you look below at. But it's something that you'll notice, especially when you look at Kim Jong-il's massive wall murals. 1 point perspective is the easiest thing to comprehend. You're typically, the railroad tracks or the inside of a room. All parallel lines go to one center point, and that center point is on the horizon line. Ernest explains how that works from a visual point of view, but it's not that difficult to understand. 2 point perspective is when you're seeing things at an angle. It's more complicated, but still pretty straightforward. He explains a lot of this using the very simple building block of literally a building block, bricks. And he pointed out something that I definitely screw up all the time. When you use 2 point perspective, if you put your two vanishing points too close to each other on the horizon line, you warp the perspective. That's the image on the left. When you pull them apart away from your canvas, you get a much more organic looking thing. It's something you can play with if you intend to do it, but you shouldn't do it by accident like I do. And of course he takes the building block thing and uses that to show you how you can create cityscapes, which, I mean, Christ, if I'm ever going to draw Spider-Man, this is I need to learn how to draw New York like I live there. Then he talks about drawing people in perspective in relation to each other in buildings, which is, drawing people in perspective. It can get awkward, but he explains everything in this book in a pretty straightforward, concise way. The pictures really help. Sometimes when he's explaining what he's doing with just the words, it gets complicated. Speaking of complicated, this is about when you look at something in the periphery of your vision, it changes the perspective. This is something I wasn't able to actually articulate as a thought, but I was aware of it instinctually. Something that I also noticed when looking at Kim Jong-il and how he does his art. He also talks about how you can find the center point of rectangles in perspective. All of this is really good, helping you actually nail technical drawing. I mean, if you're going to do comics and you're going to do backgrounds, you might have some signs, and it'd be nice if those signs weren't like stupid. Here's something that Jim Lee mentioned in one of his art streams I watched about half a year ago, drawing a fence in perspective, where you take the first bit of the fence and then you put a line through it, through the middle bit, and then of the second post, and that gives you where you put the third post, and then you rinse and repeat. And also how to draw circles in perspective by basically attaching them to squares. And really the thing about drawing in perspective is there's a simple application of most principles, and once you know it, at the very least gives you a good general approximation that will allow the eye to think things are in perspective. He also does take the time to build more complicated shapes up into actual real-world images. And of course, the whole point of this is that it just makes your job easier drawing things in perspective. And how to separate circles in perspective into equidistant parts. It's not something you'd want to spend your time doing, but if you are going to do it, you'd at the very least want to get it right. So yeah, definitely good to know. And all of this, while technical sounding, it's pretty straightforward. It's obvious it can get more technical. And Jim Lee also mentioned how to draw checkerboards in perspective. I wouldn't if I could avoid it. I think I have actually applied this, or maybe I just applied 1 point perspective and guesstimated it. Probably that's what I did. But he shows you using diagonal lines how you can split things up real nice and easy. And in the back, he actually talks about how to apply shadow in perspective, which makes my head hurt. I'm not sure if I actually understand. The problem about reading this on the tube, as I've been forced to do this week, is you don't really get to apply what you're learning. And sad clown of the week is UPS. They are a professional delivery company that seems to want to complicate the issue of delivering things. I downloaded their app to make sure I could receive a delivery that needed to be signed for from them without complication, and all it did was get more complicated. I don't like these guys. I might be receiving more deliveries from them in the foreseeable future, and if I do, they might be sad clown of the week every fucking week. But yeah, Perspective Made Easy is a pretty good book for trying to just grasp the concepts. But at the end of every chapter, it also does have things to remember and things you can do to just try out what he's been teaching, like just, put some books on a table, misalign them, draw them, figure out where the vanishing points are, shift your eye level. All very simple, straightforward. This is the kind of stuff they should teach in art courses. Unfortunately, they don't. I mean, university level art courses. They didn't teach this shit on mine. I don't think my teachers could spell the word perspective. But for £7 or £8 or whatever this was definitely a worthwhile investment. Some very useful general knowledge and some very useful specific knowledge. And there's actually a bit at the back I haven't finished. So I can look forward to that tomorrow on my way to work. But that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 155, and I will see you next time.